this video, we'll be going over creating the down poses for our basic walk. If you followed along thus far, you've created our contacts and passing poses. So now the down poses are going to fall between those. Specifically, it's going to fall between our contact pose and our passing pose. So this is where the character starts to get off balance as he catches his weight after the contact pose. Thus far, our poses have been all about balance, such as a contact pose being balanced between both the heel and toe, and the passing pose being balanced over the supporting foot. Down pose is now not so much about balance as the character just is continuing his momentum and falling down and catching his weight on the next pose. So these will fall halfway between our contact and passing poses. Since we've already established that this is a 12 frame walk, and that was further split in half on a passing pose by putting passing poses 6 frames between that, that means down poses will be 3 frames after our contact pose. So our first down pose is going to be on frame 4. So once more, we're going to start at the bottom and work our way up through the character for our down pose. For the down pose, the front foot is going to go flat. Again, the character's catching his weight, so we want to make sure that it shows that by having the front foot go flat there. The back foot, we're going to zero out our lift heel, and we're going to use toe tip to roll the foot up from the toe, and then toe lift to drag the toe some. Now we don't want to leave the foot just here though, because that's going to possibly make the foot go through the ground and give us some other issues. The foot should be progressing towards its passing pose. So we're going to go and lift it up, translate it up some, and forward. Let's check this in our side ortho view. So you see, we want the foot clearing the ground and starting to arc up towards where it is on the passing pose here. So watching the actual arc of the heel as it goes forward. Now, the majority of this we'll be doing, as far as the curve progression goes, we'll be doing in the graph editor, because it's just easier to kind of see what's happening there, because they're going to fall halfway between the contacts and passing values. So when doing the down poses, we're just going to get the character physically in position, and then we're going to edit that in the graph editor. So let's grab our cog in both our hands and then translate this forward. We don't want this to be so far forward that it's fully over the middle of the foot, because that's where our passing pose should be. We do want it to come forward as it's progressing though. So we're going to push it forward a little bit, but also because it's a down pose, let's just select our hips, and we need to have the character squashed down. This is what's going to show the character's weight, is the contrast between the straight leg on the contact and passing and the bend of the leg on the down pose. So we want to make sure our character clearly squashes down here. And as we work our way up more of the body, the down pose is going to be the extreme in our arm swing. So we're going to have it come out a little bit more, but also lift up a little bit more. To be at the extreme. Same thing with the back arm. And this is roughly what we're going to go for with our down pose. The character is squashing down, the supporting foot is flat, the back foot is rolling off of the ground, the arms are they're extreme on the arm swing. Now with that done, let's go ahead and key this. Again, mentioning that this is by no means finished, but this is roughly just the physical pose we want to have happen here. Also, let's go into get our shoulders. And I'm going to have them start coming back at this point, so starting to zero them out. And just use a little bit of the translate Y to get them lifted up some. As you can see, that caused a little bit of lockout, but we'll worry about that because we'll come back and tweak the pose. Key that. Alright, so now let's start at our foot this time instead of our cog. And the reason for that is I'm going to try to create an arc in the foot. As you recall from our passing poses, when we got to our passing pose, the foot translated in closer to the supporting leg. So in our translate X for this foot, I want to make sure that it doesn't flatline, that it starts to progress towards that value. You can see that happening here. That's our extreme. That's how the foot is translating in closer to the leg here in our translate X. Here on down pose we just created is flatlining. So let's select this key, hold down shift, middle mouse to translate it up. So it's starting to progress towards that value. Keep in mind, I'm favoring the extreme here, so I don't want it to be necessarily right dead and smack in the middle. I'm actually going to favor the extreme so that it slows into that close part of it here. And that's really what we're going to be doing for most of our curves here, is favoring the extreme value to create slow in and slow out on our actions. Let's move up to our cog, starting with our rotate Z. Again, you notice that we have flatlining. Now, we've already established where our zero values and our extreme values are. Our extreme values mean that that's as far as the curve is going to progress. There shouldn't be any keys that go in greater or lesser value than that, greater value, lesser than that, more extreme value than that. So if we've already established that 15 is our extreme on the positive side, there shouldn't be anything on the walk that drives a rotate Z value up into like 17 or 19. This is your extreme. That's as high as that's going to go. Likewise, negative 15 will be as low as this is going to go. So this, on down pose, needs to progress between 0 and 15. So it's going to have a number, numerical value somewhere between 0 and 15. As we hold shift and move it up. And again, want to favor the extreme. So it's going to slow into this as it gets up here. So we don't want it down so low that it's favoring the 0 value. We want it past the midpoint and favoring the extreme. Again, that's incorrect. That's not between 0 and 15. That's 18, obviously. So let's pull this back down again. And favor the extreme. And with the down up poses, I'm not going to be as specific as getting a full whole number of keys and everything. This is more about visually placing the posing using the graph editor. Let's move up to our rotate Y. And again, this down pose is going to fall between our extreme value here and our 0 value. We want it to favor the extreme. In this case, the extreme is down here. This is still 0. We don't want to favor the 0. We want to favor our extreme value. So now let's just position this using shift and middle mouse so that we don't so we're locked into one axis, and then position this so we're favoring our extreme value. Move to our translate X and repeat that process again. Here's our 0 value, here's our extreme. Going to move this until it favors our extreme. And then we'll continue moving up the rest of our body. Low back, so it favors the extreme. Rotate Y. Mid back. Rotate Z and rotate Y. And up back. Now, because I'm not using whole numbers or anything like that and doing this visually, what you do want to keep in mind is that you want to check your ortho front view, because at the end of adjusting all these curves, we still want to make sure that our head is facing straight forward and level. And if it isn't, that means we have to adjust some of the curves in the body to make it straightforward and level. So in this case, you can see it's kind of tilted a bit much in this direction. So that's a rotate Z issue. We can pull down our rotate Z on our neck here, and that gives us more level-headed pose. Now that done, now let's go back and adjust any IK lock or anything like that that may have been happening in the pose that's been caused now by fixing the curve progression. because the character's weight shifted, we want to make sure the arms kind of come over as well. Again, they are the extreme, they got the widest on this pose, but everything shifted over to the side, so we want to make sure that they do as well. And we want to make sure that we clearly see our eyes in our camera shot. So now with those done, let's rekey this again just to make sure that everything's is there. And we have our down pose. So the arms flare up a little bit more, you can see. Front foot goes flat, back foot rolls up off of the ground. Let's check our side ortho view to make sure that that back foot actually does progress forward. See if our toe is right here using our mouse cursor, and we use period on the keyboard. We can see that the toe is moving forward on the down pose compared to where it was on the contact pose before it. We could make some adjustments, maybe bring it down a little bit more and forward a little bit more. And see how that works. And lastly, we want to go in and check our cog, translate Z. This is our forward momentum. This is our forward movement. So as we're thumbing through this, again, our contacts and passing poses are in balance. Don't have a lot of leeway to adjust those because it could throw the character off balance. On our down pose though, since it's off balance, we want this to be to continue making the character move forward smoothly. So you can see going from a contact to the down to the passing, the character is moving forward fairly smoothly. Basically, this down pose is about halfway between our contact and passing value there. Let's move on to do this for our second down pose, which is going to happen after 13, which is our next contact. So again, 3 frames after this is going to put this down pose here on 16. And once more, we're going to go through and create the physical look of the pose, and then we can edit it in the graph editor. So front foot is going to go flat, going to zero out our heel and toe lift. Back foot is going to zero out our lift heel as it translates forward, picks up, and uses toe tip and toe lift to get into position. I'm going to translate everything forward a bit. Squash the character down, so make sure he lower down the translate Y on the hips. The arms are going to be at their extreme, so let's go ahead and have them come up a little bit higher and wider, but notice the hips are going to shift their weight, so really focusing more on the higher first. Have our shoulders, show that out, and just add maybe a little bit of translate Y to them as the arms are coming up. And then we're going to key that. And now let's go into our graph editor and make the corrections to it. Starting with our lifted foot, check our translate X on it. So it's progressing towards the extreme. Moving up to our cog, start with our rotate Z. Here's our 0 value on the contact. There's our extreme on the passing pose. So this should be down here, progressing between the 0 and the extreme value. Rotate Y. Here's our extreme. Here's our 0. Our extreme's on a contact. 0's on our passing. So this should progress between these two, again favoring the extreme. Translate X, again favoring the extreme, And just check our translate Z as well. And that's about halfway between there, so cool. Our low back. Favoring the extreme. Favoring the extreme. Etc. Mid back. And let's go ahead and make sure we're checking our front ortho view as we start getting closer to the top. And then our neck. And now we just adjust our pose. See, again, want to make that out wider and higher. And pull this out and up. There. And let's keep that pull vector pulled further away so it's not going to go through the leg or anything. Alright, and once we have that, let's go ahead and key again. And there's our second down pose. Obviously, you can copy these forward just like you did for the passing poses. So to copy these forward, if you need to make more down poses, review the passing pose podcast because it is effectively the same thing. You're just going to use middle mouse copy, but now you're using it on the down poses instead of the passing poses to copy those poses forward. So let's give a quick recap of what the curve progression looks like now. You can see that stair step is becoming more pronounced as these down poses are favoring the extreme, so you get this large gap in time, then a much smaller gap towards the extreme values, and you have these huge gaps right here, which are where we're going to be putting in our up poses in our next video. So again, our extremes are still contacts passing values. Down poses fall between those extremes, favoring the extreme. So it falls between the extreme and zero values, favoring the extreme to create some slow in and slow out. Translate X. And then our back controls. Walking up the body. Now we'll go ahead and complete the rest of the down poses for this, and we'll see you next time as we cover our up poses. Thanks for watching.